Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. Hurricane Sandy disrupting the East Coast and Wall Street. We are here at CNBC headquarters in New Jersey because the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ have completely shut down today due to the impending effects of Sandy. The worst of it now arriving to lower Manhattan in the form of some pretty serious flooding. No word yet on when trading will resume. Duncan Niederauer with us in the past hour said they hope to open by Wednesday no matter what the damage is. We've also learned that nearly 9,000 flights so far have been canceled due to Sandy, and New York City can now expect wind gusts of more than 90 miles an hour. That is up from the 60 miles an hour that was previously expected.
Well, we've got someone who might know a thing or two about what is going on right now inside FEMA. Michael Brown led the Federal Emergency Management Agency during Hurricane Katrina. He joins us now from Denver. Michael, good to have you.
Good morning, everyone.
People, especially officials, have learned a lot from Hurricane Katrina. What is the most critical in terms of mobilizing resources in the early stages of the storm like we're in right now?
Well, actually, the most important thing right now is to get people to take the storm seriously. I've heard various reports of Governor Christie, heard Mayor Bloomberg and others talking about people evacuating, particularly in Manhattan, out of the evacuation zone A. Because I think what we tend to do is right now it's not, I mean, it's bad, but it's not very bad. I just finished reading the latest National Hurricane Center report, and they're estimating a storm surge, which is going to come in later this afternoon or this evening, anywhere from 6 to 15 feet for New York Harbor, which means if it pushes up, say, the Hudson River or even up the East River some, but particularly the Hudson, you may see things like the PATH station at the World Trade Center and other places become completely flooded, and because it'll be corrosive seawater, the PATH station may be out again for a while. So I think people need to hunker down and get ready, even though it may not be very bad right now. By the end of the day, it could get considerably worse.
And what is the process for escalating the response from the federal government? We've seen play out state by state over the last few days that they effectively asked the president to declare a state of emergency, and then in certain instances he clearly has. What then happens? Is that simply that cash is available, or does it put the military on notice? How does it work nowadays?
Well, that's a great question. And first and foremost, what it really does is it takes the fiscal pressure off state and local governments. Basically, when the president signs a declaration or approves an emergency, it's really saying that FEMA will step in, will open the checkbook, and will help take care of some of those needs. So focus on getting your National Guard in place, focus on the first responders, focus on doing the evacuations, do what you need, and we'll worry about the costs later. Now, obviously, that's good for state and local governments, but again, it means the federal treasury is going to get drawn down to try to, borrow more money to take care of these needs. So it's more a matter of turning on that fiscal spigot than it is actually moving people or personnel.
You take a look at a storm of this size, what is expected to be, Michael, and what would be your greatest fear if you were FEMA director right now?
Well, I think people don't understand that. I mean, it's the end of October. Hurricanes, we're so accustomed to hurricanes occurring down along the Florida, the Georgia, Carolina coast. I think this storm shows right now 85-mile-an-hour sustained winds. It's only moving at 20 miles an hour. You've got a cold front moving in. In places like Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, you're going to see long sustained winds. You're going to see a lot of flooding. And the further north it gets, you're going to see some incredible snowstorms. So this is going to be widespread over a huge geographical area. That's going to really shut things down for a while, I think.
Michael, it seems to me that, in Galveston, people treat these things, it's almost a yawn. Up here in the northeastern, where we're not used to this in October or July,
Right.
It seems maybe you do get some people making that move, making that evacuation without having to be told 2 or 3 times.
Well, I think so. And then you have the unique situation of, for example, there in Manhattan, most people don't think about when my elevator goes out, and I live in the evacuation zone, in Zone A, say down on the West Side Highway, but I live on the 35th floor. Suddenly you have no power just to get out. Means you've got to maneuver 35 flights of steps. It's a different environment for this storm to hit, and the needs are going to be different. I think people are going to find it just very, very difficult to get around. And it's not going to last just, in and out in a day. This may last for several days.
I actually live on the West Side Highway, just outside Zone A, so the type of thing that you're talking about is very important for my community in Manhattan. And given that we now have stronger winds, given that you're now talking about potentially a 15-foot surge in water,
right,
that would seem to suggest that Michael Bloomberg just evacuating Zone A for Manhattan is insufficient. If the situation had changed, can the mayor evacuate a greater proportion of the city, or is he now locked into what he originally said? In other words, are many hundreds of thousands of people going to find they should have been evacuated but have not been in Manhattan?
Well, I'll put it this way. Anytime anyone issues a mandatory or even a recommended evacuation, you should pay heed to it and do it. But I'll give you an example. I had a friend that works for one of your competitors call me yesterday and said that the front side of her building is evacuation A, the back side is not. What should I do? I said, even if I were 4 blocks away from evacuation A, I would be moving out anyway. That's the kind of things that people need to realize, is even though evacuation A area may be well defined, it doesn't mean that areas outside they're going to be affected too. And when you think about Manhattan, I mean, it's not above sea level. It's above sea level, but not that much. People need to take this seriously. I don't think it's going to destroy buildings, for example, in Manhattan, but it's going to make it very inconvenient, no power, difficult to get groceries, difficult to get around. That's what they need to pay attention to.
Yeah, Michael, we're so used to, in the wake of a storm in the south, looking at the blue tarps, right? The blue FEMA tarps over roofs. Obviously,
Right.
You make the point about Manhattan high-rises. Is FEMA's role in an urban setting much different? It's got to be, right?
No, it's really exactly the same. I mean, FEMA will respond irrespective of the geography, irrespective of the state, irrespective of the politics. FEMA responds no matter where it occurs. And in fact, when I was the FEMA director, one of the things that we put together was our 10 worst scenarios. And this comes close to it, but one of our 10 worst scenarios was a Category 3, 4, or 5 hurricane going up the Hudson River.
Really?
Because oh yeah. I mean, it's been 100 years, but can you imagine in this day and age a Category 4 storm going up the Hudson River and literally shutting down the entire island of Manhattan for weeks at a time? I'll give you an example. In Florida, when you have so much power go out, they start trying to restore power as quickly as possible. But they can only do it block by block, street by street. So some places could be without power for days. And in Florida, you had people without power for literally 4 weeks while they were trying to get it restored. Now, that may not happen in Manhattan, but if it were a different storm, greater magnitude, you could see that happen there.
Hey, Michael, I want to go back to what seems like a very important point, and that is that your recommendation to those close by evacuation zones but are not in evacuation zones is to leave.
Absolutely. Because if, again, looking at the latest Hurricane Center report, which came out at 8 a.m. Eastern time, they're estimating a storm surge of 6 to 15 feet. Now, you guys are familiar with West Side Highway. Just think about a storm surge of 15 feet of water, which would be the worst case scenario. 15 feet of water moving up the Hudson. I mean, it's going to move in much far further in than just evacuation area A. It's going to move literally across the tip of Manhattan.
Okay, Michael, always good to get your advice and analysis in these situations. Michael Brown, former FEMA director.
As Sandy storms toward the East Coast, more than 8,900 flights have already been canceled.